I'm Andrew Rudge. I'm from the Reach Trust, which is a not-for-profit in Stellenbosch, South Africa. We mainly deal with South Africans in terms of people we're trying to help, but actually our services are accessed in over 100 countries around the world. The bulk of our audience are still on lower-end devices like this Nokia, and some of the reasons for that are the battery life is significantly longer. If you remember having a phone like this, it would last a week, so that's significant. It actually consumes less data. It's running on 2G networks, so a lot of the rural networks haven't been upgraded to 3G, but we can get data across them, and because we're keeping the parcels of data that we're passing across as small as possible. The other thing is they're quite resilient. These phones could be dropped and they would literally fall apart, but you'd put them back together and they're fine. Whereas, if you drop your iPhone, your screen's cracked, and of course acquiring them is cheaper. Even though affluent people might have moved on to a smartphone, feature phones have been passed down, and because they're so resilient, they tend to have lasted longer than the average smartphone. We're fortunate in that we're getting onto the lowest common denominator in terms of technology, but there are still frustrations around the fact that our users have to pay for data. So even though all our services are promoting social good, like maternal health or early childhood development or education, it still has a small data cost to the end user. Although we're making significant progress with some of the networks in terms of having our services zero-rated. When you zero-rate access to services, you're actually creating a behavior. So in the long run, the networks actually do better because they're creating digital consumers. I think the way to find opportunities is to be present in the community. I only really thought about doing maternal health when I had a conversation with a local South African and it became apparent that there was this need. And don't underestimate the value of local knowledge. It's important to tap into the existing intelligence that is in there and the existing knowledge, and particularly in Africa where you've got a strong oral culture. Part of the whole process is giving people you're working with a line of communication, so you can engage with them, not just pass them information and content, but actually stimulate a dialogue. But as an example, we've done an experiment called Learn to Earn in South Africa, where we are incentivizing children to do homework. That came about because of a discussion I had with a teenage girl who wants to become a doctor but is struggling with her maths. And in the course of the conversation, it became apparent that she wasn't doing her homework. The reason she wasn't doing her homework is she's the eldest child in her family, and when she gets home from school, she's expected to do chores rather than homework. As an economist, you look at that as, well, clearly the household's valuing chores more than they're valuing education. We ran a pilot at the beginning of this year using airtime as the incentive, and it was remarkable how powerful it was. Children literally willing to do 2.5 weeks of additional homework for 2 rand, so 20 US cents of airtime. Well, what we've tried to advocate with Reach is a cross-collaborative type of culture. So we're not the only ones working in this space, but we try and help one another. So the whole idea is that all the different micro communities start becoming a big macro community. So as an example, just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you might not have HIV. So how do we link in an HIV program and a pregnancy program? You might be reading a story on your phone, but it could be about xenophobia. So then how do we link you through to, say, the UN Humanitarian Centre for Refugees so that you can get more information? It's how do we take this community and expose them to stuff there and vice versa?